Welcome, everyone. We will begin the session in a few minutes. We see a good turnaround now. Thank you for joining the session. Once again, welcome to our first webinar on prefabricated modular data center offerings. My name is Sweeney DeCosta, and I'm your moderator for today's session. This will be a series of webinars where we will present our capabilities on futuristic data centers. Our chat box will be open for your questions throughout the webinar. Feel free to post your questions. We will address as much as possible at the end of the session. On our panel today, we have Raed Kutub, Senior Key Accounts Manager for the Data Center Vertical at Johnson Controls. Raed is based in the Middle East at our headquarters in Dubai. Raed holds a master's degree in clean energy conservation, and he is ATD certified from the Uptime University. He also holds a CDCDP certification from CNET. Raed has been involved with the data center business since 2010, and today he will walk you through the benefits of the modular and hyperscale data centers. Next on our panel is Sibran Pretorius, Global Director for Modular Data Center Offerings. Sibran is based at Johnson Control and Silent Air's headquarters in Edmonton, Canada. Sibran holds 2 master's degrees in engineering and has been involved with modular data centers both in the emerging and the developed markets since 2014. In today's session, Sibran will give you an overview of our data center portfolio. With that, I hand over to Raed to begin the session.
Thank you, Sweeney, for the introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, depending where you are joining us. On behalf of my colleagues in JCI, we are excited to present today how prefabricated modular data center optimizes project duration for greater efficiency and costs. And it will be one of a series of educational webinars that will be held in data center field in the future. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. My name is Raed Kutub, and I'm a Senior Key Accounts Manager for data centers in GCI for MEA region. Today's agenda is fairly straightforward. We are going to spend a few minutes as introduction talking through a broader challenges data center through a broader confront on daily basis and have a holistic approach to really address each of these concerns by Johnson Control portfolio. Then I will address the several factors that will shape data centers in the future and some of the key drivers behind the surge in prefabricated modular data center. Then my colleague Sibran will discuss more about modular data center solution versus traditional data center construction and why modular data centers constructions solutions and weighing the costs and the benefits along with the case study. At the end of today's call, we have 10 minutes really focused on questions and answer. I encourage you to submit questions and suggestions through Q&A panel at the right hand of your screen for the webinar during today's presentation, and we'll select them at the end of the webinar today. Any questions that we are not addressed today, we'll put in FAQ documents and distribute them thereafter. Also, recording today's session will be available on our website to you shortly after today's session. So if we jump off to the next slide, here at Johnson Controls, we really focus on really solving 4 common primary challenges within data center. It's fairly driving efficiency, driving reliability, driving security and flexibility, as significant data center builds are happening, as well as data center is always changing, being updated from servers to HVAC equipment to power equipment. And these 4 challenges, I am sure that everyone on this webinar really how he as JCI, they are facing this, everyone on the webinar deals with it on daily basis. And that's really how we are in JCI focused ourselves in addressing these challenges on daily basis. At GCI, our experts work closely with our clients to support their projects along with entire life cycle and across wide range of disciplines. Silent Air now is part of JCI as a Johnson Controls, and Silent Air is now added value to Johnson Controls portfolio. We do this in a comprehensive portfolio of integrated data center solutions and the global services for data center to give us an advanced leadership position in hyperscale data centers, such as a complete integrated modular data center as a prefab modular data center, including equipment rooms, server rooms, power rooms, electrical modules, and power modules, including HVAC equipment, whether it is chillers, air handling units, a cryo unit, mission critical horizontal cryo unit, building management system, digital solutions like OpenBlue, fire suppression, turnkey solution for fire suppression and fire detection, security, whether it be access control, intrusion, and services for all of these kind of categories. And most important, today's conversation focused on how prefabricated modular data centers optimizes project duration for a greater cost and efficiency. There are several factors that will shape data centers in the coming decades and driving changes in the data center design. As you know and aware that the world today runs on data, it's estimated that 2.5 quintillion bytes of data are created each day. Uh, and uh, based on International Data Corporation predicts that worldwide data production will amount about 175 zettabytes by 2025. So business continue to demand more data to drive their operation, and the need to consume increased data from additional sources faster for more sophisticated analysis. That's driving data center demand. This is also shaping how we approach data center design, including where and how data is being shared. There are several factors that will shape data center in the coming decades, like cloud computing, Internet of Things, 5G mobile computing, big data, artificial intelligence, and one of the biggest topic these days about the climate risk concern for the impact that data center have on the environment will affect the data center design and deployment. The other thing, clean power. Everyone now talking about sustainability and net zero initiative. And now everyone focusing regarding the clean power and how to achieve the net power and sustainability in their data center. The other factor is growth markets and the demand about the data center. Now, let's take a look at some of the key drivers behind the surge in prefabricated modular data centers and how they are helping to enable the rapid expansion of the data center market. If we are talking about the demand for more data analytics and machine learning and AI, it's part of a digital transformation. Existing business processes are shifting from paper to digital across most industry, and the new applications are being built in cloud now. Digital transformation is one of the key drivers of all-in-one modular data centers as a private company, public schools, municipalities, healthcare facilities, and colocation providers and hyperscalers trying to keep up with the demand. Consumer demand, it means the growth in social media as a consumer, gaming apps, streaming media services has created a huge demand for cloud capacity that seems to be growing exponentially these days. Cloud services providers who are hosting these consumer applications are racing to build out their global data centers footprint as quickly as possible. So the prefab modular data center is a perfect fit of these cloud giants. the very important point I would like to talk about edge computing. Edge computing now is increasing exponentially. It means all organizations are deploying sensor technology at network edge across a variety of vertical industry, including manufacturing and retail. Also, the smart cities movement also relies on sensors devices in order to reduce bandwidth cost and avoid latency problems. Organizations are looking to process IoT data as close to where it was created as possible. That means a right-sized prefab modular data center at every manufacturing plant or retail location. So here I will talk about challenges that are changing data center construction. One of the main challenges is skilled labor shortage, which is, you can see it in emerging market. Shortage in skilled labor is driving up construction cost and increasing the time of completion. In addition to a critical shortage in construction labor, those with a unique skills required for data center construction are even more scarce. If we are talking about regularity requirement, energy efficiency is taking on a greater importance as a data center developer. Seek to optimize a PUE as a power usage effectiveness. More data center design are striving now to achieve LEED certification to prove energy efficiency, while servers and computing hardware are being made more resilient to heat, so they demand less cooling. One of the main challenge also here these days about the supply chain disruptions. Now everyone knows about the pandemic has had a major impact on the supply chain. Many raw materials have been in short supply, which has begun to slow construction projects and raise costs. Rising cost of real estate, as the data center real estate investment trusts are competing for property to build new facilities to support cloud services and colocation providers. Increasing demand. The increase in data center demand is promoting a race to revenue. Contractors here are looking for ways to shorten time to completion, including reducing lead times for equipment. This includes chillers, switch gears, UPS, as well as cutting construction time. So now about next slides, we'll talk more details about the modular data centers, and we will talk more about the benefits of data center. I will hand over to my colleague Sibrand, and he will talk. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for that introduction, Raheed and Sweeney. So the next chapter of this discussion, I will discuss more about our modular data centers and liken them to traditional stick-built types of construction in this industry. The key thing that I do want to establish just on off the bat here is traditional, when we discuss it in the next few slides, implies brick and mortar. So a standard method of building data centers similar to what you do any other buildings. Across the world, of course, emerging or developed markets, stick-built construction is extremely popular. It certainly has its benefits. What our discussion here will be is how this can be seen in a different view when you consider our modular data centers, or in this case, if you look at my definition there, segments of data centers that are pre-manufactured in a factory environment. It is under a controlled environment, which means we can go into the benefits of this factory-built application. Just part of the introduction here to Raheed alluded to this Silent Air, who I am a global director for modular data centers of, was recently acquired by Johnson Controls, and we are part of the Johnson Controls family as of from last year. Silent Air has, over the last plus 20 years, deployed 200 megawatts of modular data centers, power rooms, and these would, fall into different categories of modular data centers. Something that I don't have on the slide, but something to consider here is when I refer to modular or prefabricated factory built, there are many methods of building different segments or sections like this. In this case, I'm talking about a steel construction in a factory sort of built environment. They are not necessarily shipping containers that is refurbished or redesigned for this. These are purposefully built data centers. So let's switch to the next slide here. There we go. When one compares traditional and modular data centers in this aspect, something to consider is the design of the solution. Now, with a modular data center, our customers are involved from the very beginning, and the method of design would be a very standard engineering practice. However, we do, in this case, consider that our solutions are products and not necessarily a building or a project, thus making them very replicable, which is one of the benefits we'll discuss in a later slide here. But the concept is that we work hand in hand on a product design that is replicable, deployable almost anywhere in the world, and it's very easy for us to ensure that we can comply with local jurisdictions with this type of design and build. One of the benefits of comparing a modular data center to a traditional data center is, of course, the time that it takes for us to do a construction. The number that I always keep in mind is 4 to 1, and it's a good rule for myself to follow. But what I imply with this is that often things that can happen on site is 4 times faster in factory, and it really does stem just from the fact that you are working in a controlled environment. We have all the equipment necessary to accomplish a task. Materials are more readily available than on site, thus ensuring that a modular data center, when done well, can certainly be done much faster than you would in a traditional build. Also, something to consider here is the cost or the price of a product versus a project. Now, when one, again, plans this very well and work with an experienced team, which I believe our teams are, the cost that one sees up front is the cost that you end up with at the end, meaning it's very much like buying a car or any other application or appliance or product from the market. The design gets priced up front. It's a controlled value, and of course, there normally wouldn't be any unforeseen costs that one would experience with this. Traditional, of course, as we all know, as soon as you start with site works in a serial fashion, there is often these unforeseen items that come up. The reality of the way we build modular data centers is that one mitigates that risk. It's not always about completely avoided, but it certainly gives you a mitigated risk or an experience where one can control those much better. Now, something that I've mentioned in the 2 above topics is serial construction. So with the traditional build, very often one would have to prepare the site before a data center or power room can be constructed. Thus, the process itself would follow a very serialized pattern of design, site preparation, data center construction, etc. With a modular data center, one of the main benefits would be that items and construction processes can happen in parallel. So as a design gets completed and approved, the site efforts can happen at the same time as us acquiring and starting to manufacture such a modular data center in a factory environment. Thus, immediately the construction manufacturing process is sped up simply because you can do things at the same time. The reality of this would be that often, especially in the emerging markets, we would be able to deploy modular data centers in a 6 to 8 month process from design. And this is, of course, dependent on the location and availability of resources there. yet it's still significantly faster than a traditional build, which I've seen can exceed the 1.5 to 2 year mark. Of course, something that we strive for at Johnson Controls and Silent Air is safety. And the factories that we manufacture out of are all registered with a number of safety protocols. We get audited every quarter for our safety. We have quality assurance and quality control people on site daily, 24/7, to ensure that our manufacturing process is controlled in a method where our employees feel safe and they construct your products and the products that we deliver to our customers in a safe environment. We strive for, of course, no incidents in factory, and thus far our records are pretty good and clean for the manufacturing process going across the world. Of course, something that one does also need to consider with a modular data center versus a traditional build is one can test and install items in factory, again, under this controlled environment. Yet, when one compares it to a traditional build, you would often have to do installation and testing on site, which just increases the risk of things going wrong. So we strive for a full test of equipment in factory. This would include, starting up of subsystems. It would be testing subsystems, and these subsystems I refer to could include UPSs or cooling systems, control systems, etc. Thus, again, with the three topics that I've just mentioned, we ensure that the quality of our product exceeds the customer expectation when it leaves our factory. It really is a product that we can control in factory. We can hold our customers' hands during the whole process, and we often encourage customers to visit us during the whole process in the factories, of visits to our factory, for them to see how this product becomes a living system over the weeks of the design, construction, manufacturing process. Now, something that I have not specifically mentioned is what the flavors of modular data centers are. So on screen are 4 very simple images. The very first item, which is on my top left screen here, we call an MDC Vault Micro. It simply implies that it's a fully equipped small data center. The small data center in this fashion can be deployed, again, pretty much anywhere in the world, and we can customize cooling, power, the construction compliance to any geography in the world. The idea of the micro is that you would have a 6, maybe to 10 rack, 15 rack solution inside of a complete solution, which is easily shippable, transportable by ocean freight, and installed on site in a number of days. So a really fast sort of a deployment on these different locations. The image just below that demonstrates a all-inclusive small MDC micro that Silent Air has been manufacturing for a customer, and the image, of course, which is a combination of a render there, but indicates a location in emerging markets where this is a remote deployment. The idea of these smaller solutions, of course, are that with the word edge that Rahid stepped on, and we won't get into the edge specifically in this discussion, but one would be able to easily deploy these solutions really fast anywhere you want in the world. The idea of the solution too is back to my product comment, is one can manufacture these over and over. It really is a benefit for us to build in a sort of a manufacturing production line of sorts, where if the customer demands, we could build these really fast, but we can also have units complete in stock, that if a site is indicated for fast deployment, that these get transported to those sites, installed and commissioned in really record speeds. Now, the fun part of what we do, of course, is that we don't just do little MDCs, comparatively speaking, of course, such as these. We also build in the megawatt ranges of slightly larger MDCs. And to the right top corner here is an example of a solution that exists out of 18 different sections. The sections themselves are all completely shippable, transportable by truck or by ocean freight to anywhere in the world. The solution itself can, and I'll get into the next slide here, but can really vary in size. This is as soon as one of these smaller solutions really has its upper limit of one solid unit of shippability, we would step into multiple sections or segments, such as this building over here. And the benefit of this building is it includes everything a traditional data center would have. We certainly have deployed a number of these. I refer back to that 200 megawatt solution that I mentioned earlier. And it really is a flexible solution that can be deployed anywhere in the world, very fast. And a fun thought here for the audience is that you don't necessarily need to think of this as one unit. The bottom image here shows a high-level representation of a campus being constructed, where the front of house could either be built again in factory or just a standard traditional build of an office space or an admin building. But the back of this unit are all prefabricated representations of our MDCs and power rooms. These are tied into your standard generators on site, utilities, or more efficient energy sources that could be used for backup. The concept that we follow and we work very closely with such customers on is the expandability of these systems. The systems themselves, again, we believe that one needs to consider what the demand is for these sites, and with us having a replicable design, one can simply have a solution that gets expanded upon very easily, fast, and in a controlled environment on these different locations. Now, if we get into, let me just switch here, if we get into a little bit more of the nitty-gritty of the larger system, and this does represent the smaller units too, it indicates that we have three very large building blocks within these MDCs. And if we were to consider the main part that one would use for one's own use, or the capacity of the data center that gets sold in co-location in the co-location industry, would be the server room modules. So the white floor space inside of these units are often, in the way we build, constructed in hot aisle containment or cold aisle containment. The system itself would have a standard rack row configuration with bus bars above them or whips to the rack for power. We would have a number of different methods of creating redundancy to the rack for the customer, depending on their needs. And in these solutions, I mentioned here 20 to hundreds of racks, but really the configuration of the way we build, again, it's a product that we can customize and tweak to the customer needs. We can go to a very large number of racks inside of a building. We are constantly involved with sites which exceed 10, 20 megawatts at a time within building phases of 1 megawatts to 2 megawatts, 4 megawatts at a time. The second component of any MDC, which is one of the critical items, of course, would be your power rooms and the power room modules in our case. In this design shown on screen, our power rooms form part of the structure itself. And in general, this would include your switchgear, UPSs, battery backup, and we have a variety of different flavors of these power rooms and how they could meet the local jurisdiction's requirements for safety and life safety. We also consider that for some of these deployments, it might not be in an efficient method of deploying a power room attached to the building in this fashion. Thus, Silent Air and Johnson Controls has a separate power room module that resembles very similar to the previous micro MDC that I've just shown you, a separate power room module that can be shipped to site and integrated quite comfortably with our prefabricated modular data centers. But often we do have customers that utilize this for their traditional builds. So again, creating a hybrid benefit of power being built in a controlled environment, tested in a controlled environment, and then powering your traditional serially built site. And then one of the key pieces and one of the items that Silent Air and Johnson Controls really are experts in are cooling modules. Now, I refer to it as a module because our systems, the way they attach to the white floor space and to the power room modules, it really is a block that can be interchanged with different technologies. We have experience in free air cooling for geographies that allow it, and where it would ensure the efficiency of the data center is as good as it can be. But we also have chilled water experience, direct expansion, and evaporative cooling experience. And all these technologies can, of course, be incorporated into our modular data center builds. The final pieces here, which again Johnson Controls has great experience in, would be control systems, fire systems, life safety equipment, of course. We do have systems such as our CCTV integration that we do in-house. We can certainly provide a full security or access control system in these MDCs, thus creating a solution that is fully equipped and fully ready for deployment on site. And to the point that I previously mentioned, in this fashion, for us to build and equip a solution like this in factory, of course, we speed up the on-site installation and commissioning, at least in my opinion, 4 times. Now, how does this, there we go, change, or how does it seem to influence our customer experience? On the screen here, you would notice a number of the topics that I've already mentioned. We will create a design that meets the customer requirements, and it's a day one requirement, but also future phased requirement. Thus, we work with our customers to ensure that a solution isn't over-engineered or overbuilt on day one, and that their capital goes to what they need immediately. And we, of course, strategize on how we can benefit and help the customer with future expansion on these solutions effectively. Point number 2 here, I've delved into a little bit here, is the short time to completion. And of course, it is all related to us working firstly in a controlled environment, but secondly, that we can complete tasks in parallel to any other tasks you would find with a traditional build. Easier to install. Our topic here literally refers to the fact that we have a solution that is pre-designed. It's a product of installation and tasks that is pre-planned. Thus, from our perspective, the process itself is extremely well controlled, and thus employing that it's an easier installation for us. The totally customizable part here is, and I do need to refer to the product part of the solution. Silent Air and Johnson Controls has experience with a number of hyperscale customers and some smaller customers of producing products. It's a productified solution. However, every customer has a slightly different need. Thus, we can customize and tweak our standard offering to meet those expected outcomes for the customer and for the specific sites. Of course, we do mitigate any risks to this site and to this deployment, again, by firstly this full design and walking with the customer through the process, but also mitigating and doing a lot of the manufacturing and the equipping of the solution in factory. Again, with us being able to control a lot of the expected outcomes of this process and mitigating unforeseen events on site, we can reduce costs for the build. The solution, especially in the emerging markets, provide greater reliability, and this is simply because of the environment often that one encounters in these locations, where either you have a resource limitation or support limitation, and because we have full support of Johnson Controls across the world, and because we have developed a product, we can certainly provide greater reliability of our solutions to the customer than what they would expect with a standard or traditional build. The fact of scalable growth, and I mentioned this when we talked about the design process here, is one can certainly create a solution that scales to the customer's need. We call it phasing. In this case, it implies that if you need to service, a certain percentage of customers or a certain capacity load day one. As soon as it reaches a certain percentage of utilization within this MDC that's built day one, it's very easy for us to receive an order for the next phase ahead of time to construct or even have in stock components for the next phase and deliver on time before the customer runs out of capacity or space for the next phase of their business. Thus, again, we really do try and mitigate customers' challenges for running their data centers and how they build it. Something that I have not mentioned, but which is quite important, is one can pre-prepare the sites for these phases. And for anybody on this specific presentation and discussion, if you do need additional information or have questions about the process, please reach out to our teams, Sweeney and Rahid, and we will be in touch with you and we can set up discussions to dive into it a little bit more for you. Now, as we design this in factory and we cater and tweak our solutions to a specific geography, again, we can utilize the technology which we have access to in-house, but also we can innovate as we design your solution to ensure that the solution is always running at the lowest possible PUE, and it is as effective as possible for the location that you would be able to run your solution in. Thus, again, it's one of these partnerships with our customers where we ensure that you get the best product for your application into any of your geographies across the world. The solutions themselves are made out of steel. They have a full secure system that we can install into these systems. Thus, it's a very easy product for us to secure and ensure that your customers receive utmost security within the solution, from physical security barriers, but also the local security systems within the system. So if we were to consider all these, there is definitely a cost implication of the method of modular data center builds, and it isn't schematic from the pre-construction phase, and this is the design of it. We as JCI and Silent Air are very brand agnostic, implying that we will work with our customers to choose the best equipment to equip in our MDCs, but we will also be able to customize the solution for cost savings upfront, thus implying that we will not drive a customer into solutions that will not fit their specific budgetary requirements. During construction, again, the idea here is that we mitigate unforeseen costs of the construction process upfront. Thus, the customer will know upfront about the equipment going into this construction, the timeline of construction, if there are any challenges during the construction process, perhaps due to long lead equipment or so, they will know it upfront, and it will incur less unexpected or surprises of the standard and traditional site build. Thus, again, we can mitigate the cost expectations of these types of builds during the construction process. And then the final process, or the final costing and savings discussion here, is what happens after we've deployed it, when the system is running. Now, of course, with a system that is being worked on with our customer, that's been optimized for a specific location, that has been customized specifically for the correct cooling for those sites. After the system has been deployed, we try and ensure that the customer gets the lowest running expenses of the system to the level of control that we can offer with the cooling, but all the subsystems that are installed. Of course, maintaining and running these systems are optimized with our support network, which is deployed pretty much everywhere in the world. I believe we are in 152 countries now with different offices of Johnson Controls. Thus, managing the maintenance of your system afterwards certainly does fall into the wheelhouse of services that we can offer you, thus ensuring that with an optimally maintained system, with an optimally designed system, we can reduce your costs and expenses after construction. Now, the discussion that I've just given you here is a very high-level view of modular data centers, I've tried to compare it slightly to the traditional build just to stimulate thought. We are very welcoming to further discussion, so please reach out to our team if any more questions on that will be there. Now, these specific topics, of course, can be backed up with a number of situations and deployments that we have done over the past 20 years of being in business. Of course, to respect our customers and to ensure that I protect any privacy here, I've generalized 2 case studies for you, and these are real case studies, real experiences with projects that have occurred. But again, just to protect our customers here, I've not mentioned names or exact locations. So the first case study that I do need to bring to your attention was an experience that we've had in the emerging markets. And this really it was an eye-opener for me seeing this in real life happening, where a very good customer to us decided to build a small-ish data center. It's only about a 1 megawatt data center now, and in some of the emerging markets that could be considered large. However, for our hyperscale customers, it's only one small piece of a bigger puzzle, of course. The customer at that point compared the different builds and the different methodologies for their needs, and decided to follow a standard brick and mortar build. The build itself, where they were thinking it would be a number of months, turned out to be about a 2-year process. Now, comparatively, in a similar build in a neighboring country, in one of these emerging markets, we compared it to this build, and we were able to complete such a project within a 7-month time frame, thus reducing this project design, build, construction, and deployment on site in quite a difficult location in the world by half. So the comparison, of course, is this 24-month construction process versus 7 to 8 months. The solutions in this case were built all outside of this emerging market and shipped into the location. Now, to our audience here, I'm pretty convinced that there will be a debate going on about shippability of units versus building on site. And those are definitely concerns when we start these projects. And that is, how do you transport and ship and go through customs clearances of these emerging markets when you do it outside of the country? Yet, in our experience over the last 20 years, it's been very much a mitigated process, that when we work with professional logistics companies and local jurisdictions, the process has been quite seamless. And if one really does ensure that your paperwork is in order, it has not shown for us to be much of a problem to get into these locations and to reap the benefit of these prefabricated modular data centers, both from installation, commissioning on site, to support and expansion in later phases. The next case study that I briefly want to touch upon, which is a completely different example, is of course in the developed markets. And it's fun to think about how different geographically we still are when we do deploy data centers. And of course, in the developed markets, we don't encounter the same, sometimes similar, but definitely not the same challenges that we would have in the emerging markets. Thus, the benefits that modular data centers have shown to provide to some of our hyperscale customers. But to be honest, I've recently worked with smaller customers out of Canada and the US, where the repeatability of a solution such as our MDCs, where the design is repeatable, the method of construction is repeatable, again, it's built out of controlled environment in a factory, has sped up the process tremendously. For many of our customers, which can forecast their expansion plans or multiple deployments in different jurisdictions, what we do for them is to pre-order certain levels of equipment, especially with the times we're living in, where long lead equipment is a tremendous challenge. And for some of the customers that do and want to mitigate the risk, we can certainly also provide them with in-stock components, but to a manufactured level. Thus, Implying what I mean, we could, for example, build a small micro MDC and physically have it in stock for our customers. And in these sort of situations, if the customer needs to expand rapidly or suddenly have a location of expansion that needs to be addressed, we have everything they need available, and we are not prone to having challenges with this equipment. The case studies again are very high-level examples of two situations which we've experienced over the last number of years. Again, when you reach out to us, there would be a lot of conversation on other examples which will prove that the MDC solutions do offer a valid benefit to the market, and it's something that we are very proud about, and I'm proud to work with our customers on. At this point, I would like to end my discussion topics here, and I will hand over to our panelists here, Rahid and Sweeney, and we will step into questions and answers.
Thank you, Sabran.
Thank you, Sabran.
Thank you all for posting in your questions. We see a few coming through. We'll try to address as many as we can, being conscious of time. The first two that have come in seem to be similar questions, which is, can we expand the module vertically, or can we expand to a couple of more floors? And the second question is, what is the temperature that it can withstand? Sabran, could you take this question for us?
Certainly. May I ask you just to repeat that question once more, Sweeney? As we were transitioning through these questions, my sound just bugged out for a minute there, so I only heard the temperature question.
So can we expand it vertically? Can we expand it by a couple of floors? And what is the temperature that it can withstand?
Perfect. Thank you very much. So both very valid and exciting questions. So the reality with temperature, I'll start there, is, again, we in my career, for example, I've seen these MDCs, which are steel built, of course, and that might immediately raise questions for some of our audience here, being deployed in locations such as Chad, the Middle East, where daily temperatures exceed the plus 40 degrees Celsius temperatures. I think in one extreme day a couple of years ago, 5 years ago, when we tested the local temperature, it was 50 degrees Celsius. So the solutions themselves, when you look at the wall construction, the roofing construction, has multiple layers of insulation to them. Thus, the internal environment of your servers, of course, is always controlled. It's extremely precision cooling that we deploy with our MDCs, similar to what you would do with a brick and mortar solution. But we can, however, deploy these in the extreme colds. We manufacture many of these segments out of Edmonton, which in the peak of our winters could reach as low as minus 40 degrees Celsius. But I've also seen some of these units deployed in, as I mentioned before, the Middle East, where you get extreme temperatures up to 52 degrees Celsius or so at a point. Of course, we've also deployed these in high humidity locations, the east coast of Africa, for example, or in the US. So I do not think temperature is a big concern here, because we can cater and design to that. When it comes to vertical stacking, we do have a number of solutions that could assist our customers in this. Traditionally, with the silent air method of build, we do not stack our modules directly on top of each other, and we often deploy a framing structure to support this. However, again, with the way we deploy and build our solutions, we are currently busy with a solution that Rahid and team are busy with, where the modules are completely stackable on top of each other. So again, the solution is very flexible and tweakable. Thanks for that question, Sweeney.
Thanks, Sabran. I think the next question is a continuation of the same. Is there a dedicated installation team for when the modular units arrive at site, or are there local partners who will assemble on site?
I'll take this one too. The reality of these builds are that in factory, I've mentioned so many times on this discussion now, it's a controlled environment. We build in a controlled fashion. We have local expertise in our factories. However, as soon as they leave, what happens? And to answer this question, yes, we have a combination of both. We certainly have to employ local labor and local help. And this is firstly to help the local economies where we deploy and work with our customers on. It's just fair for us to do this and essentially involve the local people with these builds. But of course, you can't rely on a local team without some leadership from an experienced team. So very often we, and in most cases, 99% of the time, we do send local teams that are extremely familiar with our product to site, and they would assist in the commissioning, in the installation, and the putting together of these MDCs.
And just here to highlight, Sipran, regarding also Middle East Africa, we have different type of business models here. One of the model, we are working directly with the client, and the client is hiring the contractors, is doing installation. Or is the other type of business models, we are partnering with the local partners. They are specialized for installation for these modular data centers, and we are partnering with them. But of course, in types of our scope will be supply, testing and commissioning, and supervision of installation.
Thanks,
Rai.
You're welcome.
The next question is, what is the life expectancy of a modular data solution compared to a traditional build?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a loaded question, that where it's fun to consider. Again, this is a product. It is built out of steel. The general geography and where it gets deployed certainly does influence the life expectancy of these buildings, but also the use cases of these. I've worked with customers where they purchase these from us, they deploy it on site to be written off within a 5-year time span, as fast as that. However, if one does look at the construction methodology and the method of us building and deploying these systems, it is not unheard of for these to last up to 20 years on site, effectively run, and for them to still be in a position for running. Of course, with the advancement of equipment, of course, what we find with our customers is when you start looking over such a long period, by that stage, some of the more newer technology might either have higher capacity or temperatures that they create, where the limitation of the solution wouldn't be the longevity of our product, but instead the technology that was used 20 years back when it was designed and built. However, if you physically look at the structure itself, these are designed to last over many years, especially when they're well maintained.
Glad to know. The next question is, how many modules are required to have a 1 megawatt data center?
Oh, this is a good one. So again, at 1 megawatts, with some of our specialized cooling solutions at this very moment, and you know, again, to the person that asked this question, we should really get into further discussions of 1 megawatt. But 1 megawatt of IT capacity can, in one of our solutions, be housed within a single module, and this is a very specialized cooling technique. Of course, I don't want to delve into that just yet. Which means it's one truckload of MDC that gets transported. But the examples that I've shown you on screen, which are between 1 and 1.5 megawatts, those would be, in this example, it was 18 different sections that get attached together. And this would be predominantly a power room section. You would have a cold aisle end section, a hot aisle containment, cold aisle section, hot aisle containment. So there's varying methods of splitting the solution up. And the key thing for this, of course, is shippability. You do not want to create a solution that is difficult to transport. So of course, we split these up. The key thing that I do need to add onto that question here in the clarification is we equip each of the segments as fully as possible in factory so that we can reduce on-site efforts. We do not, you know, our intention is never to ship a section or a segment of these MDCs without anything in it. It just defeats the purpose of modular building.
Thanks, Sipran. Conscious of time, I think we will take one last question. And a note to all participants, there will be a survey launched as we conclude. We would really love to hear your feedback on the session. So the last question is, how many factories are there to fabricate these modules and where are they located?
A good answer. So I'll answer half of the question here, and I think, Raid, you can step into the other half of the question. So when I speak for the silent air manufacturing facilities, we have about 1 million square feet of manufacturing space across the world. We predominantly manufacture out of Canada. I'm located out of Edmonton, as Sweeney introduced me, and we have 5 buildings up in Edmonton, Canada. We have a very large campus in the US. I'm currently based out of Phoenix, Arizona, and we manufacture most of our European builds out of Dublin, Ireland. We are, of course, expanding to the rest of the world with our manufacturing capability. However, at this very moment, being a Johnson Controls company, Raid, you could maybe step in and explain some of the other locations which I've not.
Yes, we have, as a chillers, we have different locations to manufacture the chillers. We have 1 and 3 in USA, and we have manufacturing for airside in Izmir, Turkey, and we have another airside factory in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, and we have factory in China, and we have factory also in Malaysia. It's like 7 facilities total.
Perfect. Thank you, Raid.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Raid. I think with that, we come to the end of this session. The survey will be up on the screen in a moment. We really appreciate you taking the time to be a part of this event. And this is just the first of the many more that are yet to come. So your feedback will help us have further sessions more customized to your expectations and inquiries. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.